If back in school you ever took a game development course, or perhaps you might have just been interested in indie game development during the mid-2010s, you may very well have seen Indie Game the movie. I remember being 15 and watching it during a computing class, and honestly the film had some rather remarkable stories about two games I'd already played before, Super Meat Boy and Braid, as well as a third game, Fez. Fez is a 2D puzzle platformer where you rotate the world on a 3D plane to get where you need to go. It's a cool game, honestly, and it's a really interesting concept, and while the game is fascinating in itself, you also got introduced to its creator. Let's talk about Phil Fish. Phil Fish co-created Fez with Renar Bidar, a puzzle platformer where you rotate a 2D world in a 3D space. It was clever, it was stylish, and like any other good puzzle game, it made you feel smarter than you actually are. It also took forever to make. Development started around 2008 and dragged on for years. Money issues, technical disasters, Xbox certification nightmares. At one point, if Microsoft rejected the build again, the studio might have actually collapsed. The documentary paints Fish as anxious, obsessive, and permanently two bad emails away from a breakdown. And honestly, it was pretty compelling. There's this one particularly compelling scene where Fez is being shown off at PAX East. For those that don't know, that's a rather large gaming convention. And immediately, there's a game-breaking bug. And you can see the cogs start to turn in Phil's head as he's watching the first player try out his game, and the game's failing to deliver. As the scene goes on, you can see him start to panic, you can see him slowly lose his cool and have to try fix the game on the fly. It's a brilliant scene, and it really does give you a taste of how frantic and frenetic indie game development truly can be. When Fez finally released in 2012, it was a massive hit for a small studio. Critics loved it, gamers loved it, everybody adored it. Our tortured artist had finally won. And then Phil logged on to Twitter. Old Phil was never shy about his opinions, and at GDC 2012, Fish was asked his opinions on modern Japanese games. His response? Japanese games just suck.
I am so proud of it, and as a Japanese. And my question is, could you tell me what kind of about recently Japanese? What do you think about the recently Japanese game?
Is it what is about Japanese games that inspired us?
Recent.
Most recent Japanese
I'm sorry.
games.
They suck. I'm sorry. Like, you guys need to get with the times and make better interfaces and like update your technology. We're totally kicking your ass. Back then, you guys were the king of the world, but your time has passed.
Now, there are ways to critique industry trends, and that really wasn't one of them. Now, what made this moment legendary wasn't just the quote, it was the setting. Fish didn't say this to a faceless camera, he said it during a Q&A to a Japanese developer who had just politely asked him his opinion. You know, basically, Phil's a bit of an arsehole. It wasn't just a bad take, it was a total lack of social awareness, a lack of a social filter, if you will, in a room full of his peers. Was it hyperbole? Probably. Was it a career-safe move? Absolutely not. And instead of smoothing it over, Phil did what he always does, and he doubled down. This was the first time a lot of people really realised, oh, he's like this all the time. As I said before, Mr. Fish has a hard time keeping his thoughts to himself. And while some developers, can just mute trolls, turn off notifications, old Mr. Fish, he chose violence. Now, not physical violence, no. He chose something much more pathetic. Twitter violence. He argued constantly, with critics, with fans, with journalists. Hell, he argued with anime profile pics with only 14 followers. He just didn't believe in disengaging. He believed in winning. The problem is, you can't win Twitter. Twitter isn't a debate. It's an endless food source for people who enjoy watching you unravel. Every reply became a screenshot. Every screenshot became a thread on usually some shit stack like Reddit. Every thread became content. and it was like watching someone try to punch fog. Around this time, another fact of the indie scene became more and more obvious. It was small and incestuous, and often developers and journalists knew each other quite well and were quite close. Maybe too close. Zoe Quinn! Journalists followed developers, everyone subtweeted each other. From the inside, maybe you could call it a community. From the outside, something else. People started muttering about clicks, about favoritism, about indie darlings being protected. There was never proof of bribery or paid reviews, but there were rumours and suspicions, and of course, the optics were pretty terrible. And old Mr. Phil Fish, visible, loud, socially connected, became the face of the indie elite. Fair or not, once the internet decides you're symbolising something, you don't get to opt out of it. Phil Fish, as I'm sure you're all shocked to hear, was not politically quiet. Now remember, while we're all used to devs posting constantly about politics now, he was a bit of an outlier back then, and he made sure everybody knew it. He was both progressive and didn't care what anybody thought of him. He was extremely online about it, and it's his right to do. But equally, if all you do is get into arguments about politics, don't be surprised if you turn people off of both you and your games. But combine that with the combative personality, the beginnings of the culture war era, and thousands of strangers who already think you're an arrogant prick, and suddenly every tweet is a spark. There were meltdowns, there were rage quits, there were dramatic declarations. He would announce he was done, then come back, then argue more. It was episodic. You didn't need a Netflix subscription, you just had Wi-Fi. In 2013, Fez 2 was announced. People were excited. Then came a public argument involving journalist Marcus Beer. The trigger was relatively minor. Beer had criticised Fish and another developer for refusing to comment on a new Xbox self-publishing policy. But for Fish, this was the final straw. Things escalated quickly online, egos flared, Beer called Fish a tosser, and Fish demanded an apology that just wasn't coming. And then, Phil Fish, like a petulant child throwing his toys out of the pram, tweeted, "Fez 2 is cancelled." That's it. One tweet, sequel gone. Imagine working for years on a game, building hype, and then ending it mid-argument, like you're flipping a Monopoly board. That was peak 2013 internet temper tantrums, really. After that, Fish announced that he was leaving the gaming industry, and for the most part, he did. No dramatic redemption arc, no big comeback. He moved abroad for some time and stepped away from mainstream development. He later resurfaced in a tech-adjacent space, including NFTs and occasional online appearances, but nothing close to his Fez era. It's like he rage quit an entire career, which is impressive in its own way.
Now, why do I find Phil so interesting? It's not because he's talentless, he really isn't, and it's not because he's incompetent. Fez genuinely is a really great, engaging game. He's interesting because just like any great LolCow, he just couldn't stop pressing that button. He just couldn't stop taking that bait. Like a greedy little fish, every time someone dangled a hook in front of him, he'd snatch it up and then he'd be brought into a brand new argument. It just was fantastic to see. Every time someone tweeted something stupid at him, and I mean legitimately ridiculous, he would snatch at it. He'd start fighting with them. He'd start arguing and shouting and screaming, treating it like it was the most important debate of his life. Every single argument on Twitter for him was like a final boss fight, where the boss is only defeated by your own impotent rage. And every single time someone scored a little hit on him, someone retorted back with something he didn't like, he flipped out and went to a new phase that was just as embarrassing, if not more, than the last. Phil is, in every miserably measurable metric, a LolCow, and falls into that beautiful category of interesting individuals that I just can't help but stare at. Now, Phil wasn't my first LolCow. I've been involved in this shit for a very long time. But he was the first one I saw in something so mainstream. And he's always intrigued me for that. He's always kept my eye because of that. To anybody else, you'd look at Phil and think that he'd won. But to himself, he's not won unless he's defeated every single person that doubts him online. And that makes him a loser. And now we're at a point where nobody remembers Fez, which is a shame. Like I said, it was a fun game. But everyone remembers everybody remembers Phil's freak out, his crash outs, his spurg outs on Twitter. Everyone remembers him shouting and screaming at people and just losing his shit online. And I think he really is living proof that a creator's personality can overshadow his own creation, his own product, his own art. Well, Phil had main character syndrome. Phil had main character syndrome in an environment that was designed to milk that. And he got milked for everything he was worth. Fact is, if you have a combustive personality, someone's gonna light it, and the internet loves fire. Back when I was 15, I thought Indie Game the Movie was a window into the world of indie game development. A sort of look behind the curtain, a way to really understand these devs, their mindset, and I thought it was going to be potentially a path for me to take in the future if I stuck with game development. What I didn't realise was one developer actually spent more time arguing online with anime and Sonic profile pics than actually developing games. Phil Fish decided to fight the internet, but unfortunately for him, the internet just doesn't lose. Thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. If you have any more interesting ideas for videos, do please drop them below and I will endeavour to get around to them. Cheers.